everyone, welcome back. We're going to continue reading Canto 14, The World Soul. We left off right around the beginning of page 292. All here was known by a spiritual sense. Thought was not there, but a knowledge near and one, seized on all things by a moved identity. A symphony of self. A symphony of self with other selves. A touch of consciousness on consciousness, and being's look on being with inmost gaze, and heart laid bare to heart without walls of speech, and the unanimity of seeing minds in myriad forms, luminous with the one God. Life was not there, but an impassioned force, finer than finesse, deeper than the deeps, felt as a subsoul and spiritual power, a quivering out from soul to answering soul, a mystic movement, a close influence, a free and happy and intense approach, of being to being with no screen or check, without which life and love could never have been. Body was not there, for bodies were needed not. The soul itself was its own deathless form, as met at once the touch of other souls, close, blissful, concrete, wonderfully true, as when one walks in sleep through luminous dreams and conscious knows the truth their figures mean, and where reality was its own dream. He knew things by their soul and not by their shape, as those who have lived long, made one in love, need word nor sign for heart's reply to heart. He met and communed without bar of speech, with beings unveiled by a material frame. There was a strange spiritual scenery, a loveliness of lakes and streams and hills, a flow of fixity in a soul space, and plans and valleys, stretches of soul joy, and gardens that were flower tracks of the spirit. Its meditations of tinged revere, air was the breath of a pure infinite. A fragrance wandered in a colored haze, as if the scent and hue of all sweet flowers had mingled to copy heaven's atmosphere. Ooh, that's nice. Appealing to the soul and not the eye, beauty lived there at home in her own house. There all was beautiful by its own right, and needed not the splendor of a robe. All objects were like bodies of gods, a spirit symbol admiring the soul. A world and self were one reality. For world and self were one reality. Immersed in a voiceless, internal trance, the beings that once wore forms on earth sat there. In shining chambers of spiritual sleep, past were the pillar post of birth and death, past was their little scene of symbol deeds, past were the heavens and hells in their long road. They had returned into the world's deep soul. Ooh, sounds nice. And all now was gathered into pregnant rest. Person and nature suffered a slumber change. Excuse me. In trance, they gathered back their bygone selves in a background memory's foreseeing muse, prophetic of a new personality, arranged the map of their coming destiny's course. Excuse me, all my allergies are kind of acting up today. Heirs of their past, their future's discoveries, electors of their own self-chosen lot, they waited for the adventure of new life. Goodness. Lord have mercy. A person persistent through the lapse of worlds, although the same forever in many shapes by the outward mind unrecognizable. assuming names unknown in the unknown climes, imprints through time upon the earth's worn page, a grown figure of its secret self, and learns by experience what the spirit knew, till it can see its truths alive and God. Once more they must face the problem's game of birth. The soul's experiment of joy and grief, and thought and impulse, lighting the blind act, and venture on the roads of circumstance through inner movements and external scenes, traveling to self across the forms of things. Into creation's center he had come, the spirit wandering from state to state, finds here the silences of its starting point, in the formless force of the still fixity and brooding passion of the world's soul. All that is made and once again unmade, the calm, persistent vision of the one inevitably remakes its life anew. It inevitably remakes, it lives anew. Forces and lives and beings and ideas Forces and lives and beings and ideas are taken into the stillness for a while. There they remold their purpose and their drift, recast their nature and reform their shape. Ever they change, and changing ever grow, and passing through a fruitful stage of death after long reconstituting sleep, resumes their place in the process of the gods. Until their work in cosmic time is done, here was the fashioning chamber of the worlds. An interval was left twixt act and act, twixt birth and birth, twixt dream and waking dream. A pause that gave new strength to do and be. Beyond were regions of delight and peace, mute birthplaces of light and hope and love, and cradles of heavenly rapture and repose. In a slumber of the voices of the world, he of the eternal moment grew aware. His knowledge stripped bare the garbs of sense, knew by identity without thought of word. His being saw itself without its veils. Life's line fell from the spirit's infinity along a road of pure interior light. All between tremendous presences under the watching eyes of nameless gods. His soul passed on a single conscious power towards the end, which ever begins again, approaching through a stillness dumb and calm to the source of all things human and divine. There he beheld, in their mighty unions poised, the figure of the deathless two-in-one, a small being in two bodies clasped, the diarchy of two united souls, seated absorbed in deep creative joy. Their trance of bliss sustained the mobile world. Behind them in a morning dusk one stood, who brought them forth from the unknowable. Ever disguised she awaits the seeking spirit, watcher on the supreme unreachable peaks, guide of the traveler of the unseen paths. She guards the austere approach to thee alone. At the beginning of each far spread plain, pervading with her power the cosmic suns, she reigns inspirer of its multiple works and thinker of the symbol of its scene. Above them all she stands, supporting all, the sole omnipotent goddess ever veiled, of whom the world is the inscrutable mask. The ages are the footfalls of her tread, their happenings the figure of her thoughts, and all creation is her endless act. Her spirit was made a vessel of her force, mute in a fathomless passion of his will. He outstretched to her his folded hands in prayer. Then in a sovereign answer to his heart, a gesture came as of worlds thrown away, and from her raiment lustrous mystery raised, one arm half parted the eternal veil, a light appeared still and imperishable, affected to the large and luminous depths of the ravishing enigma of her eyes. He saw the mystic outline of a face overwhelmed by her implacable light and bliss, the atom of her illimitable self, mastered by the honey and lightning of her power, tossed towards the shores of her ocean ecstasy, drunk with a deep golden spiritual wine. He cast from the rent stillness of his soul a cry of adoration and desire, and the surrender of his boundless mind, a cry, excuse me, of adoration and desire, and the surrender of his boundless mind and the self-giving of his silent heart. He fell down at her feet, unconscious, prone, period. End of Canto 14. We continue with the Kingdoms of the Greater Knowledge, Canto 15, Love and Light.